Michele Cushatt, welcome back to Life Today.
Thank you, Randy. I'm so glad to be back.
It's good to see you again. We're going to mention your new book, Relentless.
Which I appreciate.
Of course. And anybody that is touched by this interview, interested in this interview, should just go get the book, because we're not obviously going to get through all of this. But I wanted to ask just how you're doing.
I'm doing good. I mean, really, I'm here, which is amazing.
Right. No, truthfully.
Truly. I mean, it's amazing because I always love spending time with y'all here at Life Today. But even physically, health-wise,
right.
It's pretty amazing I'm still here. So I always am like, well, I can't complain too much, at least not at this exact moment, because I'm here.
All the diagnoses clean?
For now. But, after having it 3 times, I learned to take a day at a time. I don't look too far ahead.
And to give me some of the details for people that aren't familiar with you on where and exactly what was it, squamous cell?
Yes, squamous cell carcinoma of the tongue.
That's the nastiest?
It's
the worst?
It's the worst.
My sister.
Yeah.
She passed away, and it was that.
Yeah, it's brutal, and it's. I'm actually on an advisory board for a research study at a state university on head and neck cancer. Okay, so I've actually been involved behind the scenes of some of the research that they do on head and neck cancer, and cancer of the tongue, cancer of the throat are in that same category, and it is one of the rarest cancers. One of the most under-researched cancers, and it has the highest incidence of depression, anxiety, unemployment afterwards, like functional, unable to work, and suicide.
Wow. How many of those have you had to deal with? Because I know you've had some of them.
Yes. Well, yeah, I would say I've touched on all. I can still work. In fact, most of the people that I've been involved with this study aren't able to work at all, and I still work. I still get up and speak. As you can hear, I'm standing here speaking or sitting here speaking now. But most people aren't able to return to normal life. And as a result of that, then you have the depression, anxiety, the chronic pain, the difficulty doing everyday functions like eating, swallowing.
Right.
Add to that, diminished will to live, really, is what it's all about. So, but the PhDs that I've talked to said, yes, it has really the highest incidence of all of those. So what they're trying to do now is come up with ways to support the mental health of people that survive head and neck cancer. And like your sister didn't, and that's actually more common than not. But for the few of us that make it, you have another battle to fight.
Right. So how have you survived that battle?
It has been a struggle. I mean, it has been an ongoing struggle. So to give you an idea, I have chronic pain every day. Ongoing pain. Swallowing is very hard for me. So, you and I have saliva in our mouth that God made us to do that. I have a hard time getting it down. So what happens is I end up choking. There are times that I choke so badly that I almost have to call 911 because I can't breathe. Wow. And that's almost a daily occurrence. And then on top of that, just speaking is hard. And when I'm a mom of 6 kids, it's kind of important to talk. Right. But you kind of want to talk. And just all those different layers. And so I've had to really dig deeper than I've ever dug before to find meaning and purpose and resilience and faith that's outside of my appearance or my comfort or all those things I took for granted for so many years.
Where would you be without faith? What role is that?
Well, I've wrestled with my faith many times over the last few years. It's hard to deal with this much suffering for almost a decade without wrestling with some questions about...
Like what? Yeah.
Like, okay, if God is so good, why doesn't he intervene? If God is a good God, how can he let me experience this level of physical pain every day without taking it away?
What do you think?
That's a very good question. I mean, I would love to have a nice, clean, neat answer. Some of the insights I've gained, first of all, I'm not going to dishonor people who are in pain with a tried answer. If somebody tries to give me a tried answer, it kind of makes me want to slug them a little bit, right? So I'm not going to do that. However, I have learned that there are benefits of pain that I wouldn't get any other way. So I'm able to connect with other people in places of suffering that most people wouldn't be able to connect with.
Do you think God brings the suffering?
God's a good God. However, from the beginning of the Bible, Jesus was destined for death, right? I mean, his purpose was to come and suffer and die. that was God's intention all along. There are verses that talk about that. So I wrestle with that whole idea of, in Jesus's case, it was that's what God wanted to happen in order to redeem us. It was done for love. Does he cause cancer? Does he cause my pain? No, I don't think that. But he certainly doesn't waste it. And he's allowed me to go through this. Timothy Keller says it this way, and this has been really meaningful to me, that God gives you what you would ask for if you knew what he knew. And I'm paraphrasing. God allows you to experience what you would be okay with, what you would ask for if you knew what he knew. Now, let me translate that to where I'm at right now. Right now, 9 years into extreme suffering, I have seen God do incredible work in my own heart, healing, forgiveness, a faith that is stronger than it's ever been before. I have seen God's ability to use my suffering in order to share the gospel with people that would have never been open to it before. If God would have asked me a decade ago, Michele, if I could allow you to go through something that would allow people to hear about Jesus that would never be open to it, would you be willing? I would have said yes. I love Jesus that much. Now, in the moment of my suffering, do I feel super happy about that? No.
Sure.
But if I knew what he knew, if I knew what God would accomplish through these things, would I be willing? I would have said yeah.
I don't know that most people would say that. In your position.
Let me be really clear. I hope it never happens again.
Yeah.
I never want to go through that kind of suffering again. It scares me.
Right.
But I also have seen moments of divine presence and glory that has taken my breath away. And I can't deny that it was God's presence. And those moments are few and far between, but they are so sweet that I would never want to not have them. And I know they only came as a result of this long journey of pain and suffering.
Right.
So if I went back, I'd have to give up that too. And I don't know if I want to give that up.
Wow. Okay. That's significant. That's deep.
You opened the can of worms.
I love to go there because you know what? At some point in our lives, we all have to go there.
We have to, yes.
I actually just asked Robert Morris that question.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Why does a good God allow people, even his people, to suffer? And I'll just throw some of his points at you and see what you think. He says, back up a little bit. Did God create a perfect world? Yes. Was there suffering and pain in that perfect world? No, there was not. That all came with sin, and sin ultimately brings
suffering,
death. Yeah. And so there's no escaping. And so it's not God's creation. It's kind of man's creation by choosing. Now God allowed us to gave us the option to choose so that we could experience love. But he basically says the suffering is the result of mankind's choice of sin. Now I see part of that, but when you're in suffering, that feels just like punishment. So that starts to separate me from the love of God, right? So I have to take it a little further from that, because that's like, then that just feels like I'm suffering because God's punishing me for sinful creation. Well, okay, so that's on the macro level of things. On the micro level, the curse of sin and death is broken in Christ. So there's all that. We don't pay for the sins of the fathers, so the generational things are not there. So there's something else going on, I think, in the individual level.
Think of it this way. If you want to get really big muscles, I haven't wanted to have big muscles in a long time, but if theoretically we did, we would go subject ourselves at the gym to pain and suffering to be able to build strength.
You're right.
If you and I wanted to get a PhD, we would subject ourselves to excruciating academics and research papers, all this kind of stuff, because we know the benefit of that. We see the value of pain, childbirth, for crying out loud, and some women do it multiple times. Why, right?
I have no idea. If it was up to men, there'd be a lot of single children out there.
Yes, exactly.
Only child, right?
We see the value of pain and suffering in a lot of different categories. But once it crosses a certain line, we all of a sudden see it as having no purpose.
I think a lot of that has to do with our short-sightedness in the sense of eternity.
I agree. And I think some of that is a unique to an American or Western civilization mindset. We wake up every day with the expectation of comfort. We are somewhat, we feel entitled to a good life, right?
Yes, we do.
So that makes us really kind of ticked off at pain and suffering.
Yeah.
But there are a lot of places in the world that they have such an eternal, such a holistic view of pain being a part of the human experience that they're not wrecked by it like we as Americans often are.
It's true.
Right?
Very true.
So part of me says we need to recapture a theology of pain and suffering. Okay, and again, I cannot possibly know the mind of Christ and the mind of God. He is beyond understanding. But what I have personally experienced, as much as I hate pain, and I'm coming off of several days of pretty excruciating pain, I don't like it. I cannot deny the work it's done in me. And from that standpoint, it's been probably one of the most productive gifts of my life.
So, how is this encouraging? No,
I think it's totally fair. How is it encouraging? Well, first of all, pain and suffering is a great unifier, a great leveler of humanity. None of us can escape it, right? In case you didn't know, you are going to die someday.
Yeah.
And chances are that process is not going to be comfortable.
Well, I haven't been to the point where you probably wish to die a few times.
Yes, more than once, many times, right? But the pain and suffering, first of all, is part of the human condition. We were never promised anything otherwise. Jesus makes very clear, in this world you will have trouble. If you look at Scripture, the pain and suffering throughout Scripture is everywhere. Look at Hebrews 11, right? The list of people of faith and what they suffered.
Right.
And even Hebrews 11 says, and they did not receive what was coming.
Yeah. Well, I would argue that has to do with Christ, but there's also the Scriptures on the other side of it, of death, where's your victory?
True.
We have power over sin and death and overcoming. I'm sure some of the, I don't want to step on toes because I have lots of friends in this country.
You made me step on toes, and it's only fair.
some of the, the faith community.
Yes.
If you just have enough faith,
Yep.
I bet that doesn't go over too well with you.
It doesn't, because during this season that was the hardest for me, I was reading my Bible and praying every day. I was fasting.
They're not crazy, completely crazy. There
are scriptures of that, but
Yes.
there are plenty of people who prayed in faith that did not get what was promised them.
That's true.
Yet.
That's true.
Right? And to me, it all comes about, what is your perspective? Do you really think that from birth to 76 years of age, whatever your lifespan is it? If it is, then you better hope that faithful prayers give you what you want, right? You better hope, because this is all there is. If you really realize that this is but just a blip on the timeline, a vapor, then this right here is so temporary. And we've spent such little time dreaming of heaven. If we had a grasp, if what Jesus has promised is really coming,
right,
we will forget pain in the flash of a second, because it will be so glorious.
It's kind of like that childbirth. It's like if you're 76, take the 76-year lifespan, it's like a 76-year childbirth to a degree.
Yes.
And then,
which the Bible talks about, right? The earth groans in the pains of childbirth. And somehow we have to decide, first of all, do we really believe that Jesus was God's son? That he died and rose again, and that he left and he's coming back for us. He left to go prepare a place, a permanent place forever with him. If that is true, then even as hard as my pain and suffering is, I can sit there. There are times when I'm having bad pain days that I dream of heaven.
wow.
I sit there and just imagine. Wow. I just sit there and imagine. You know why? Because when I get to heaven, I'll be able to taste food again. Having 2/3 of my tongue gone means I have about 20% of my taste left. Do you know when I get to heaven, I expect Jesus to be waiting for me with a platter of donuts.
Well, he talks about a feast.
Do you know, I think of that feast, and I believe it's a literal feast.
I do too.
I believe we will be made so holy. I spend time thinking that there is a day that's coming where I will be made whole.
Yeah. Jesus ate a lot in the Bible.
He did eat
and he fed other people.
I like him for that, right?
Legit,
Food
I think the feast is a feast.
It's a feast, and it is coming. And there's a part of me, I've thought about this. I don't know how theologically grounded this is, but I think when my body is made whole, there's going to be a sweetness that I experience that you don't, because you haven't lost
Sure.
all of this,
Oh,
right?
yeah. Yeah, that only makes sense.
Right? So
Yeah.
there will be a sweetness when I get all of my taste back that will not, it will be so beyond what you experience. It will still be good. It'll be a good feast
It's okay,
for
I'll
you.
be enjoying my vision.
There you go. And when that happens, this tiny blip of life will seem so small.
Won't matter. I'm going to leave it there and tell people to get the book, Relentless. Is there a website just for the book, or is it your website?
You can go to michelecushatt.com/relentless or relentless-book.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Thank you for being real and honest and struggling.
Yeah, we wrestle with it.
Yeah, I think people need to know that even as believers, we do wrestle with these kinds of things, and it's okay.
It is okay.
God can handle it.
I used to think that if I followed this trail of breadcrumbs, like of my questions and doubts, that I'd end up in a place with no God. Like if I followed this, that I'd end up, and God's like, oh girl, I know who I am.
Just the opposite, huh?
You just keep wrestling because it's all going to lead you back to me.
That's
It's
great.
true.
Thank you so much.